I've seen the film. How are they going to like get around the whole Spider-Man of it all, having Madam Web and not Spider-Man? And you figured it out. How did you crack that?
Well, I always wanted to tell a story about a woman who was seeing the future, or thought she was seeing the future, and I'd be like, if you thought you were seeing the future, if you saw visions of the future, you would probably think that you were losing your mind.
Sometimes I'll start a sentence, and I don't even know where it's going. I just hope I find it along the way, like an improv conversation.
Madam Web, Sony's latest attempt at a superhero movie, spins a web more tangled and frayed than Morbius. It's destined to become a case study in cinematic misfires, a movie so confusingly disjointed that I can only doubt its creators ever had a roadmap. From the lead performance by Dakota Johnson, which oscillates between indifference to an attempt to salvage an unsalvageable script, to the ensemble struggling against the screenplay's gravitational pull towards incoherence, the movie is a mess. Johnson's Cassie Webb emerges as a paramedic with the ability to foresee the future, a narrative device that propels her into a series of time-bending escapades. However, the plot's substance is as elusive as the webbing of its titular character, with her journey to unite future Spider-Women feeling both rushed and undercooked. The script, courtesy of the minds behind Morbius, Matt Sazama, Burke Sharpless, and Karim Sanger, lacks vitality, purpose, or cohesion. A labyrinth of exposition and franchise ambition often sideline authentic character development for the sake of hurrying things along, and the action feels like an afterthought. While I appreciate the lowering of stakes to a more intimate scale, a refreshing pivot from the usual world and multiverse-ending showdowns, the execution leaves much to be desired. The director, S.J. Clarkson, finds herself at the helm of this cinematic quandary, wrestling with a narrative Frankenstein pieced together by a committee of 5 screenwriters, a scenario that rarely bodes well, and the film's aesthetic coherence unravels in real time, with scenes that feel as though they're being spliced together on the fly. Amidst the disorder, the antagonist, Ezekiel Sims, lurks with intentions as murky as his utilization in the story, aiming to thwart a prophecy that spells his doom at the hands of the nascent spider heroines. Tahar Rahim, tasked with infusing life into the film's lackluster antagonist, finds himself not only battling the script, but also dodging the slings and arrows of post-production blunders, with almost all of his lines ADR'd in post-production.
A spider can give superhuman strength and power line. That's the madness.
The audio-visual dissonance viewers experience isn't due to technical malfunctions in the cinema, but rather to shockingly poor overdubbing choices. Now Sony's decision to forego an advanced screening for critics begins to feel like an act of self-preservation. For those unacquainted with the source material, Madam Web is a Marvel character with precognitive abilities and a trusted ally of Spider-Man. However, this film iteration seems to have lost its way en route from comic book page to screen. In the end, the film stands as a testament to the perils of franchise expansion without a clear directive or a sense of coherence. Hey guys, what's happening? Nihat here with Film Comics Explained, and today we're diving into the disappointment that is Madam Web.
I don't understand what's happening. I've been having visions. I think I'm seeing the future.
What the hell?
She didn't see that coming?
The film opens in the Peruvian jungle in 1973, where Constance Webb, portrayed by Kerry Bish, is looking for a unique spider species with her colleague, Ezekiel Sims. Despite being pregnant and somewhat frail, Constance is determined. But things take a dark turn when she finds the elusive spider and Ezekiel betrays the team, killing them in cold blood before also shooting Constance in the stomach and taking the spider from her, like some kind of cold-blooded prick with no form of decency.
He's an ambiguous villain, isn't he? Yes. And that's what I loved about him. I think there are 2 sides to everything, and I think not everybody just comes out born evil or good or...
The oddest part for me is that the director thinks he's an ambiguous villain, but the film wants you to know that he's bad and he has no motivation for this act, beyond some dribble about nobody having helped his family, which is unrelated to what he does here. The opening scenes wave glaring red flags. The camera work veers into the realm of amateurish, with dialogue exchanges marred by bizarre, seemingly accidental zooms, the first of many, that would be more at home in a documentary, or oddly, a mockumentary like The Office, than a tense standoff. Unexpectedly, Constance is rescued by a group of warriors known as Las Arañas, aka the Spiders, who pick her up, run across trees with bad CGI and camera work reminiscent of Twilight, and take her to an underground cave. There, in a ceremonial act, they allow a mystical spider to bite her just before she delivers her daughter Cassie. Before her death, she gets to see her newborn and the tribe's leader promising that he would be waiting for her daughter when she came back looking for answers. What's weird is that we hear these superpowered spider people running above Ezekiel, and there's a number of them, so considering he was taking something sacred from them, why didn't they stop him? The answer is because it needs to happen for the story to exist, nothing more. Jumping 3 decades to 2003 in Queens, we meet her daughter Cassie Webb, now a brooding adult with little knowledge of how her mother died. You might be wondering, how did an Amazonian spider tribe take her back home? How was she able to get citizenship or an American passport? But these and more are left to be sorted out in the audience's headcanon, because the movie isn't interested in painting a full picture. Cassie navigates the urban jungle of New York as a paramedic, working alongside Adam Scott's Ben Parker, aka Uncle Ben, but not really. Venturing into the streets of New York does little to salvage the narrative, as the film bombards viewers with a barrage of jokes that miss the mark and stilted dialogue that strains believability. Following an emergency call, Cassie's return to the hospital is marked by a touching but awkward moment when the patient's son offers her a drawing in gratitude for helping them. Here, Cassie's hesitation is gently overridden by Ben, who encourages her to accept the heartfelt gift.
The little boy wanted to say thank you.
You know what? Mr. Ben Parker here did all the work, so...
Our protagonist presents an enigma wrapped in a paradox. One might expect her profession to lend her character a nurturing, empathetic edge, yet the film opts for her to have a detached aloofness. When the child thanked her for saving his mother's life, Cassie not only fails to recall the event, which just happened a few minutes ago, but also responds with a palpable discomfort bordering on rude. This leaves audiences grappling with how to align with Cassie, whose backstory of a solitary upbringing in foster care is intended to evoke sympathy, but instead renders her demeanor jarringly off-putting. Ezekiel Sims, now residing in New York as well, and somehow having amassed a fortune off-screen. Another thing we're forced to explain in our headcanon is tormented by recurring nightmares of being murdered by 3 young women endowed with spider abilities. The distress leads him to share the visions with an NSA agent he just met at the opera and is now sleeping with. Sims then exploits his spider powers to fatally poison her, after getting access to her password and gaining entry to worldwide surveillance software. This only made me wonder why an NSA agent is carrying encrypted national secrets to the opera, beyond because the script needed it to happen. During a perilous mission to save a driver from a car teetering on the edge of a bridge, Cassie and Ben spring into action. They successfully rescue the driver, but Cassie finds herself trapped in the vehicle as it plummets into the river below. In this critical moment, a mysterious force surrounds her, triggering an awakening of latent abilities as she experiences visions before Ben resuscitated her. You see, unbeknownst to the nefarious Ezekiel, Cassie now has precognition, and this places her squarely in the path of destiny, armed with the foresight to alter the fates of the Spider-Women he sought to end. Subsequently, at a baby shower for Ben's sister-in-law Mary, Cassie creates an uncomfortable atmosphere, candidly recounting her mother's death during childbirth and her solitary upbringing in foster care. This tonally jarring revelation not only dampens the festive mood, but also burdens the audience and guests with an ill-timed exposition dump. For me, the incident encapsulates the film's struggle to endear Cassie to the viewers. Additionally, she encounters a peculiar sense of déjà vu when a balloon pops just as the infant's name is being revealed. His name is Peter Parker, by the way, but because Sony wanted to distance this film from their successful IP, the reveal is masked by the pop, and an example of them wanting to have their cake and eat it. Amidst the chaos, product placement emerges as an unexpected source of amusement, with Pepsi securing a starring role that outshines much of the cast. Cassie is awkwardly holding a can, but never opens it, in one of the laziest forms of marketing I've ever seen. With the paramedics called to a fire at a neighboring building, Cassie and Ben rush to assist, and while aiding an injured man, she experiences a disturbing vision of her colleague O'Neill and his blood on her hands. This prompts Cassie to attempt to take over driving duties from O'Neill, fearing for his safety, but despite her lukewarm efforts, a truck collides with his ambulance, resulting in his immediate death. Stricken with grief and confusion, Cassie returns home and is told to take a week off to recover. She then has another premonition of a bird crashing into her window and dying, but by leaving the window open, allowing the bird to pass unharmed, Cassie learns that she might have the power to change future events. Personally, I would have just had the first vision be of the bird, before the O'Neill vision, enabling her to mourn the bird and celebrate saving her friend, but that's just me. Meanwhile, Ezekiel, along with his assistant Amaria, employ facial recognition technology in a bid to identify the women from his nightmares. He literally describes the masked women he saw in his dreams, gets Amaria to sketch them out in a digital render before taking a few years off their age to correctly identify who they might be. This is just insane technology that wasn't available in 2003, and the sequence borders on absurdity. Regardless, their search points them towards 3 young girls, Julia Cornwell, Anya Corazon, and Martha Maddie Franklin. As Cassie boards a train, she notices the same teenagers and is struck by a vision of him murdering them. Spotting him approaching, she leads them off the train to safety, and initially, the girls misconstrue her intentions as an abduction attempt. However, their perspective shifts dramatically when they witness Ezekiel, now donned in a sinister Spider-Guy suit, scaling the ceiling and launching a deadly attack on police officers. In a bold move, Cassie commandeers a taxi, convincing Julia, Anya, and Matty to join her. Somehow, despite a Spider-Guy killing multiple officers, it's Cassie the cops are looking for, in something that I assume would have made more sense in a previous cut. Nonetheless, after a tense escape and initial awkward exchanges, Cassie leads them into the forest to share her mysterious visions. It's here the trio realize their unexpected connection to Cassie. Julia is the stepdaughter of a patient she helped at the start. Anya recognizes Cassie as a neighbor notorious for cluttering her mail area, and Matty had a near-miss incident with her ambulance while skateboarding. And so, to keep the girls safe, Cassie decides to leave them hidden in the woods while she looked for answers. Now, with Ezekiel using cameras and surveillance technology, this is a good decision. But Cassie and the girls don't know that, so from their point of view, it's odd that she abandons 3 young women in the middle of the woods. It's an example of the writers conflating information the audience has with that of the characters. After removing the number plates off the taxi, her search takes her back to her apartment, where she goes through her mother's journals and photographs, notably finding a photo featuring both Constance and Ezekiel. You'd believe that driving a stolen car without plates and the fact that she's a wanted woman would mean that the cops were looking for her, but these facts are completely ignored by the film. Meanwhile, impatience and curiosity lead the girls from the safety of the woods to a nearby diner, enticed by Maddie's suggestion for food. There, I kid you not, they start dancing on a table in front of some local boys. You know, as if some kind of spider guy didn't just kill a number of cops while trying to hunt them down 3 hours ago. Upon her return to the empty woods, and after a harrowing vision of Ezekiel killing the girls at the diner, Cassie races against time to stop it from happening. In a dramatic entrance, she crashes the taxi into him and is momentarily poisoned by the spider guy before escaping with the girls. While she reprimands them for their unruliness, Ezekiel discovers that Cassie is the daughter of Constance. Cassie, portrayed with a disinterest so palpable it borders on art by Johnson, quickly begins to grow weary of her unexpected role as guardian, but still secures a motel room as a temporary refuge for them. Sweeney, Mercer, and O'Connor, meanwhile, adhere so rigidly to their character outlines that any chance of depth or development is swiftly quelled. Ultimately, their shared sense of aimlessness, stemming from backgrounds marred by loss, absence, or displacement, serves as the unlikely glue that binds them, albeit through a series of disjointed sequences and an over-reliance on exposition and vehicles as the go-to method for conflict resolution. Julia reveals her emotional isolation, with her mother institutionalized and her father's new wife making her feel unwelcome. Anya recounts the loss of her mother and the deportation of her father, leaving her in a constant fear of facing a similar fate, while Matty expresses her desire to distance herself from her wealthy parents. Cassie's investigation leads her back to the diner, where a premonition has Ezekiel exposition dumping and disclosing his motives for pursuing the girls. Despite his claim that they gain powers in the future, she remains skeptical of their threat to him. Believing she needed to head to Peru to unravel the mystery of Ezekiel and how to stop him, Cassie entrusts the girl's safety to Ben. Ben is her best and only friend, looking after his pregnant stepsister, yet Cassie thinks it's a good idea to put them in the path of the unhinged spider guy. We'll see how this plays out shortly. Arriving to the very site where her mother conducted research 30 years ago, she meets with the chief of Las Aranas, who facilitates a spiritual journey by separating Cassie's life force from her body, after telling her that when she accepts responsibility, great power will come. It's like Michael Scott trying to quote Uncle Ben's "with great power comes great responsibility," but failing miserably.
Early worm gets the worm.
Another worm? Like, are they friends?
This early bird gets the worm.
The journey reveals intimate visions of Constance during her pregnancy, challenging Cassie's long-standing belief that she was unwanted. Turns out, her mother's dedication to finding the spider was driven by her desire to find a cure for her daughter's life-threatening condition. Enlightened by these revelations, Cassie hugs her mother before reconnecting with her body. Don't understand how this is possible, as her power is supposed to be precognition, not time travel. At the same time, Mary goes into labor, prompting Ben to transport her and the girls to the hospital. I need to point out that there's no reason for the girls to come along other than to give Ezekiel an opportunity to find them, which he does using street cameras. Upon finding the apartment empty and returning from Peru in what seems like just one day, Cassie is struck by a vision of him wreaking havoc downtown, and so she commandeers an ambulance and rushes to stop him. This is insane, as the paramedics, needed to save people's lives, something she would know as a paramedic. As the tension escalates, Ezekiel finds them and prepares to use a grenade that he pulled out of God knows where, and Cassie's timely intervention hilariously involves crashing into him through a billboard, enabling her to rescue the girls while ensuring Ben and Mary made it to the hospital. This was extremely risky, as she could have easily crashed into the car carrying the girls, Ben, Mary, and Peter Parker, ending the movie right there and then. With her getting another premonition that tells her what to do, they seek refuge in the warehouse from earlier, where she calls for a helicopter extraction. To counter his impending arrival, they use flares to ignite crates of explosives, creating chaos as Ezekiel enters. The group then make a dash for the roof in anticipation of the chopper, but Ezekiel manages to bring it down. And then comes the piece de resistance, the final showdown, set against the backdrop of a colossal Pepsi-Cola sign, transforming the climax into an ambitious soda advertisement. In a genre known for its dramatic confrontations amidst the skyscrapers of New York, the movie opts for branding over bravery, embedding its legacy into the annals of marketing.
How's it going, Mr. Director?
Good. I'm really excited.
Well, you should be writing and directing a commercial for Pepsi. Doesn't get much bigger than that.
The girls attempt to aid Cassie, but are knocked down by Spider Guy and find themselves dangling above raging fires, while Ezekiel taunts Cassie about the impossibility of saving everyone. Cassie then utilizes astral projection we didn't know she had to orchestrate the rescue of each girl, simultaneously luring Sims into a trap. Here she reveals the visions haunting him were not forewarnings of the girl's actions, but of her own, which makes no sense considering the context of how the premonitions worked up until this point. You can't just establish a set of mechanics and then break them when it's convenient. That's just lazy script writing.
I reject your reality and substitute my...
Ultimately, as the Pepsi sign begins to give way, he's knocked to the ground before becoming entrapped by one of the letters. He has super speed, agility, strength, can leap huge distances, survive getting hit by a car twice, yet is destroyed by a Pepsi sign. This, coupled with a Calvin Klein billboard cameo, elevates product placement to a protagonist. Concurrently, Cassie is propelled into the river, suffering blindness from a wayward firework. In a courageous effort, Julia saves her from the water, while Anya and Matty apply the CPR techniques Cassie taught them earlier, successfully reviving her. The aftermath finds the group in the hospital, where they stand united by Cassie's bedside, sharing a collective sense of gratitude. We then find out that Cassie is paralyzed for some reason, despite not seeing any other debris hit her.
I did not hit her. It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her.
Despite the severe injuries leaving Cassie blind and immobile, she embraces a new chapter, offering Julia, Anya, and Matty a home with her. Mary also welcomes the baby boy we know as Peter Parker. She then shares with them a prophetic vision of their future, where they emerge as superpowered vigilantes. Amidst the uncertainties, her anticipation for what lies ahead is marked by a smile that isn't characteristic of the woman we saw throughout the film. It's here I noticed the film's promotional material teased audiences with the promise of superhero transformations that never materialize. In a twist that might surprise no one, yet disappoints everyone, Madam Web turns out to be a masterclass in misdirection. The anticipated debut of the Spider-Women, heralded by Ezekiel's prophetic visions, remained just that, a vision that lasts no more than a minute. What can I say about Madam Web? Action scenes fizzle out with no impact, the dialogue meanders without purpose, and special effects look unfinished. The finale, rather than soaring, limps across the finish line with a whimper, marked by explosions and plot mechanics that barely stir a pulse. Madam Web straight up squanders its $80 to $100 million budget and the cachet of Marvel characters in a spectacle that wavers between the mundane and the absurd. The dialogue stumbles with such gracelessness that one wonders if the script was ever subjected to a critical read-through, let alone revision. Each scene transitions with a jarring lack of coherence, suggesting an editing process more akin to a rough cut hastily prepared for an early screening than a polished final product ready for the silver screen. Yet it's the film's ADR that emerges as the most egregious technical flaw. Ezekiel's dialogue, disconnected from the movement of his lips, evokes the dissonance of a poorly dubbed foreign film.
I'm not interested in her. Focus on finding those girls.
Cassandra Webb.
Did you say Webb?
This persistent issue, inexplicably pervasive throughout the movie, betrays a post-production attempt to overhaul his dialogue without the recourse to reshoots. Such glaring audiovisual disjunction serves as a testimony to the film's broader disregard for coherence and quality. Dialogue jumps between the dire and the laughably dated, with attempts to anchor the film in 2003 via references to American Idol, feeling more like desperate grabs at temporal authenticity than meaningful content. An exposition is wielded with the subtlety of a sledgehammer, with characters often regurgitating on-screen events as if the audience needed a play-by-play recap. Dakota Johnson delivers a performance that lacks the emotional depth, relatability, and charm required to carry the film, rendering Cassie as engaging as dialogue with drywall. This convergence of uninspired writing and underwhelming acting from the entire cast creates a cinematic experience that struggles to find its soul. The film attempts to weave a tale of found family amidst adversity, but instead of cultivating genuine connection and chemistry between the characters, it opts for forced camaraderie by proxy. Backstories are dropped like hot potatoes, serving as mere placeholders rather than catalysts for growth or understanding, rendering journeys as flat as a dialogue characters are burdened with. One can't help but ponder the series of unfortunate decisions that led to all of this. The culpability should be scattered across the board, but a spotlight must inevitably fall on the writing duo Matt Sazama and Burke Sharpless. Their filmography, peppered with titles like Dracula Untold and Morbius, reads like a roadmap through Hollywood's most forgettable detours. The mystery of their continued employment in an industry that's supposed to thrive on success is as baffling as the plot twist they pen.
Have you thought about where the story will go?
I mean, I've got plenty of ideas. And after the movie, I'm going to track down the executive in charge of this and tell them all of them.
Oh, sure. We have, I mean, one of the wonderful things about
This
the movie
is talking about Michael.
just
My plan, a man pans. You're not saying anything. At least Jim was being direct.
Thank you,
He's
Amanda.
telling us his dumbass plan.
Then there's the director, S.J. Clarkson, making her leap from television to the big screen. While her TV credentials might remain unscathed, Madame Web is a disappointing addition to her work. Sony's role in this debacle deserves its own critique. Honestly, it's hard to imagine that the creative minds behind Madame Web envisioned their climax against a backdrop of corporate soda propaganda. Yet, here we are. This cinematic endeavor, unworthy of theatrical release, streaming platforms, or even the most forgiving of direct-to-DVD bins, relegates Morbius to the realm of cinematic masterpieces by comparison, and makes me crave Morbin time.
It's Morbin time.